Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by John Lyons, founder of JLock Consulting, a fractional CRO and sales consultancy helping early-stage tech and cybersecurity companies unlock growth by professionalizing sales leadership, process, and go-to-market strategy. John brings over 25 years of hands-on sales and executive experience scaling cybersecurity and software leaders. John, welcome to Founders Future.
Well, thank you.
I'm excited to dive in. I always like to start from the beginning. So take me back to before you started JLock Consulting. What were you doing at the time? And then what was really the motivation behind starting the company?
Sure. If you put it at about 20,000 foot overview, I've been spending about 30 years in enterprise technology sales. So in the 90s, a lot of that was with storage, a lot of that was with network management, but I've spent the last 25 years really in cyber. Most of that being in sales leadership, occasionally as a CEO. That is through a wide variety of startups, several larger companies. During that duration, I've had the opportunity to have a lot of challenges as a CRO for domestic challenges, global challenges, companies that are emerging, companies that are broken and that I've inherited, and kind of everything in between. So about 10 years ago, I'd had a stint where actually it was my only stint at being a CEO. And at the end of that stint, I came out and I was wondering, what am I now? Am I a CRO? Am I CEO? And I spent about 6 months just consulting because there were a tremendous amount of cyber startups at the time. And a lot of them are really lacking go-to-market answers. They've been built by technologists, really smart guys, but not necessarily with a business background. And so I had done that for a while, helping a variety of different cyber startups, but I wasn't really ready to leave my CRO role at that time. So I had decided to stay as a CRO, go on full-time with one of my clients, and spent the last 10 years doing additional CRO roles with various startups. It had been my decision, though, that I really liked that consulting gig. There's an element of me that's also an educator, and it really feeds that characteristic of mine. And I had decided that at a certain point in my career, which was going to be somewhere between about a year and a half ago and early this year, I was going to make a dynamic shift out of the CRO role and go into fractional CRO and go-to-market consulting. It had also been affected by the fact that post-COVID, we had a structural change in how investors approach the marketplace inside of cyber. So previously, it was very much, I come out with some great tech, you're a tier one VC or PE, you give me money, we're going to go after the best logos we can. We are not really going to focus on being profitable. We are going to focus on being notable. And you come back to me for money when you run out of it, and I will give you more money. So we have really artificial funds. This is not from what, we're not killing what we eat. We have an endless well to go to. We're never going to make that company profitable. We are going to make it sexy, and we are going to flip it, and everybody's going to make money out of it. That model changed after COVID. So you have all these startups that were built on that model, which is a bloated model. It's a model where particularly where you overemploy, particularly in sales and marketing, because you can afford to. You also get CROs much earlier than you need to have that many executives inside of the company. So now you're coming back to investors and you're saying, I've got this really neat tech, and they look at the tech, but what they want to know is, are you profitable? And if not, when are you break even? And that's got to be within about a quarter. The game doesn't work because if I was profitable, why am I coming for money unless I want really accelerated growth? So a lot of these companies now, particularly in the last 2 years, have had to do a right sizing. This isn't an economic effect where one or two companies need to do layoffs. This is an effect where all these startups now need to deflate. So the musical chairs game is going, but when the music stops, there's no other chairs. So we see a deluge of layoffs, and some of those are just going to leave the sector. And a lot of startups have also gotten away from having as much executive support because they can't afford it. So a lot of them have fired their CROs. A lot of them have downscaled their CEO, gotten rid of CMOs, various related officers. It doesn't change the problem that they still need help. It does rectify the problem that they didn't need that expensive a full-time employee. So there's really a gap in the marketplace for, can I bring someone on, not get into giving out so much equity, not get into doing the fringe side of things, but pay as needed to resolve a problem that maybe takes a month to fix, maybe it takes a year, or support me until I get large enough to hire a full-time person in that position. The timing was very good in the market for the role I wanted to go into. The timing was very good for me for where I was in my career and where I decided to go. So I took that leap about a year and a half ago. And it's been a great move. I've not had a problem finding clients. One of my biggest concerns is making sure I don't find too many clients because I can only spread myself so thin. And I want to make sure the work I do is the best work I can do. And so that's what kind of brings me here with you today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for breaking that down in a way that people can understand it. So it sounds like the old model was basically we're never going to be profitable, but eventually we're going to make money on an exit in the future. But
Correct.
then investors started saying, hey, no, we want you to be profitable before we do anything like this. And that shifted the whole mentality. So no longer can they bring somebody on full time, but they still need the help, but they don't have the cash necessary to bring on someone full time. So this is where you come in, where it's fractional CRO and sales consultancy essentially. Now, I'd love to talk about, because you mentioned you're not having trouble finding clients. What are you currently doing right now from a lead generation and marketing perspective?
One of the big pluses about being inside of a related sector for 30 years is your network is very broad. And to me, I've always felt your network's everything, particularly inside of technology. So there are organizations that I've come into because of the relationships I already have, that be that with the founders or be that with other executives. I do come in through investors at times. I have a fair number of investors in my network. A lot of times they're getting, one of the inroads often with them is they've got 30, 40 companies in their portfolio. A few of them used to sell but don't sell now or never really got off the ground. So the first question isn't running the revenue side, it's dissecting and auditing the revenue side. So in those cases, a lot of times the investors will initially bring me in to do a sales process audit. And that's where I rip apart all the wins, all the losses. I interview the sales team. I look through their spin, their pitch. I sit in on a lot of that myself, and I'll come back to them later with a whole rundown of what's working, what's not, what are you missing that you should have, what do you have that you could get rid of. It does also help to evaluate the sales team because sometimes if you don't have sales leadership, it's hard to tell what reps are A players, what reps are B players. Do you have some C's that maybe don't fit? So that's a lot of times if it's in the investor side of things, I come in there. If I'm coming in through my own contacts, more often than not, I'm coming on board for a period of time to handle a variety of problems that they're aware of or to manage a sales team that they don't have anybody else to run.
Got it. I actually forgot to do this. Let's dive into the offers so the listeners have a more holistic understanding. So you mentioned the sales process audit. Break down to us, who would you say is your ideal customer? What kind of startup? And from there, we can dive into the different offers and services you provide.
Sure. So I don't only work in cyber, but I mostly work in cyber. That's where most of my network is. Sales and technology is not different for cyber than it is for storage or for anything else in technology, but I just have a much larger network inside of cyber. Generally, my client is going to be a cyber startup who's going to be anywhere from post-seed to pre-B. So they may be in their first year and running and gunning to try to make $1.5 million ARR for year one. They might be pre-B and be sitting around at 25, 26 million. And they're really looking for not just growth, but they're also looking for the growth that's going to make them attractive for the round that they know they're going to go for probably in about a year.
Got it. Now, you mentioned the sales process audit. What would you say is your core offering when you're working with these post-seed to pre-B companies?
It's a variety of things. If I come in to do the audit, it's usually because they know that sales isn't working, either never worked or got broken somewhere along the way. A lot of times that's also because there was a sales leader who maybe did not put the engine together properly and he's not there anymore. He or she is not there anymore. And you've got a broken engine. You don't have the person who broke it in the first place and you don't have anybody there who knows how to fix it. That's very common. It's also very common for me to come in and evaluate that you really don't realize you have no pipeline. And one of the big challenges with founders is oftentimes because they haven't usually been salespeople. They do understand technology. They understand solving problems. They don't necessarily understand why people choose to buy. And so you really have to build a foundation that is going to feed that. And the beginning of that foundation is pipeline. So if I come in and you need to sell X and your pipeline is roughly X, you're never going to hit your number. So you've got probably other problems, but we have to fix that problem first. If you go to battle with no ammunition, you are not winning the war. A lot of times I will come in then and build out the process related to lead generation, or I may build it out completely. For instance, I'm a big advocate of surgical outbound so that you know exactly the profile that you're going after, exactly the titles you're going after, the verticals you're going after, the size revenue-wise of those companies. and you can sic trained SDRs on them so that you're getting meetings, you're getting them with exactly the personnel you want. Post-pandemic, most people do not have internal SDRs anymore. It's hard to get them to come into a headquarters. A lot of people don't have headquarters anymore, and then you have to pay for a director over them. So the outsourced market for that has really boomed since then, particularly during COVID when they would still have people in offices, but everybody else had closed down their offices for quarantine. So oftentimes I'll bring in a cross-section of 4 or 5 agencies that I've worked with before. I'll sit down with the founders and explain the pros and cons. I'm not going to tell you exactly who I think you should go for. I'm going to tell you why I lean towards 1 or 2 in there and why I think you should. But I'm going to give you all the ammunition to make the decision. And then we'll decide on that agency. Typically, I will build out the playbooks with them. I will build out the spin. I will build out the how to overcome objections. And then I will manage that relationship because I've done that quite a few times. If you have someone that's done it before, particularly if they've done it with a particular agency before, your time to conversion, your time to actually seeing meetings is greatly shortened. So usually with the ones that I work with, who I've had good experience with, I can typically get into playbook building with them, usually have them dialing in less than 2 weeks, and usually putting meetings on the schedule in about 2.5, 3 weeks. So we become production very quickly.
Nice. I'm super curious, going back to the lead generation and the marketing. I'm curious your perspective on this because I've had a gentleman on earlier this week who also offered fractional services, but for him it was more like CFO work.
Yeah.
And he also relied on his network and word of mouth primarily for lead gen, but he expressed a lot of frustrations with inconsistencies and lack of predictability. Now, you're saying that actually don't have a problem finding clients. So I'm curious your perspective on that and what you're doing to build more predictability when it comes to lead flow and customer acquisition.
Yeah. So if you talk to a lot of investors now who invest in, let's say, seed or A round and what have you, and you look at their portfolios, they still follow the model that generally investors have followed for about the last 10 years. They may have, if I have 50 people, 50 companies in my portfolio, it's going to be a vast minority that's going to really knock it out of the park. And then there's going to be a couple that break even or make a little bit of money, and there's going to be some real dogs. So in any portfolio, it's never all superstars. There's always some children who have fallen behind inside of that portfolio, and they're willing to pay to have somebody with experience come in and take a look and tell them, I can fix this, or I can fix this, but you're going to have to change a lot of things, or even occasionally that it's unfixable. It's not unique on the market to run into a company that has built a product for which there is no market. And I do run into that sometimes.
Got it. So for you, really the biggest thing is having the investor network that have the portfolio companies, because that's when you can get a lot of clients from just one contact.
That's a really good conduit for me, but I do have a lot of people who've worked for me over the years. And in the past, they were good field reps or directors or sometimes VPs, and they've moved up in their career. So oftentimes they may be in different roles in companies where the CEO comes to them and asks, I want to have somebody come in and take a look. We need to get this fixed. And so I get a call on that because in their lives, I've been their mentor. So I'm a go-to for when things are cloudy as far as what the fix needs to be, but it's critical that it gets fixed.
Got it. What's your vision for where you want to take the company? Because it sounds like there's an inherent cap on how many clients you can take on at a particular time. So if you were to think 12 months down the line, what's really the goal that you're aiming to?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the problems that sales and related are very personal. People like to have the personality that they want to deal with. They want to have the aggressiveness. They want to have the communication. So it starts to focus very much on the individual. And so for that reason, a lot of times when somebody is paying for JLOC consulting, they're really paying to get John Lyons. And I'm selling myself and selling myself on my experience. So that's to be expected. But yes, if I want to scale, I can only at the moment scale as much as I can really spread out John Lyons, or there are some canned processes that I've done that I can sell as processes. The one place that I can do expansion, and I think it's really needed on the marketplace, is in alliances. In the last couple of years, if you want to talk to an investor, the first thing they want to know about is where do you fit in AI? But one of the second things they want to know is what is your play with MSPs? Because MSPs have really related where vendors used to fit. In fact, most of them are, VARs. Most of them are ex-VARs that have decided that the margins are better to do MSP work, and so they focus on that. So I have some very good alliance people on my network. It is the sort of area where I could bring that in under my umbrella, and it wouldn't be a problem for paying JLock but not getting John Lyons, because you're mostly getting more process evaluation, process review, process fixes. And so that works really well for bringing in some alliance people. And even though there are a lot of channel people, there are not a lot of good alliance people.
What's MSP for people that don't know?
In this case, you would see it as a managed service provider or a managed security provider, but essentially I'm outsourcing the security operations inside of my organization. So rather than have a security team that's running soup to nuts, I may have a few security people that do some things I want done in-house. The rest of it, the monitoring, the vulnerability scanning, the remediation, whatever services they decide to provide, are then coming from a remote service provider. And the margins are good there, and that's particularly popular in mid-market and SMB.
Got it. So your idea for expansion is essentially expanding the offerings and the services that you provide. Have you thought of doing the same thing that you're doing with these early stage tech companies and cybersecurity companies, and just bringing on account managers and bringing on other consultants so it's not tied to your time? Is that something that you're ever thinking about?
No, I spend a lot of time brainstorming on it. The cross-section offerings that I have now are things that would have to be delivered for pretty significant change to the sales process overall, and that people would want it managed by a pretty experienced sales leader. That doesn't mean that I couldn't get into areas where I could use less experienced people under me for other processes. It's just I have to broaden the offering to get there.
Fair enough. I'm curious what you feel like is the biggest challenge you're facing right now.
The biggest challenge is general. It's the same thing as with the sales in general. I can get very focused on my clients' needs, and sometimes I'll be acting as their sales leader at the time. So it'll almost be like being a full CRO. It's just that I may not be a permanent CRO. So on the other side of the tracks, I have to always remember I will eventually work myself out of the job with most of my clients. Eventually, I fix their problem, or I build the process and then I help them hire, which comes up a lot also as far as reps, sales leaders, what have you. And then when all the dust is settled, I've built a cohesive sales engine and the people who run it. And you don't really need John Lyons anymore. So I may come in to do an audit, and it may be a 1 or 2 month thing. I may come in to really run and build out the sales side. And that might be a year and a half. But eventually I will need other clients. So one of the key things is you've got to sit back and always be telling yourself, okay, who else have I run across recently that I should really be engaging with to be my next client? Always be prospecting, always be filling that pipeline, always making sure you're not caught flat-footed. But that's the challenge in anybody doing any form of sales has that same challenge.
1000%. You're echoing a lot of the sentiments of the guests that I bring on. And with that note, what is the best way for people to reach out to you to work with you?
You can come to me almost any way that you want, but I am very responsive to LinkedIn. JLock Consulting has a landing page also. You can go to that, and that will get alerts and messages back to me directly. My contact info is on LinkedIn also. However you want to reach out to me through any of those methods is fine. And yeah, I think I'm pretty accessible between that cross section.
Awesome. Any final words before we wrap up?
No, I just think that I will say, I think everybody has to figure where they want to go in their career. We all go through stages between our early stage and when we may want to go into management, maybe when we want to become more strategic and lateral into something, maybe when we want to make a significant change in our career without completely changing our career. So I think for myself, I can say, I think the timing that I picked was very good, as I said before, for both the economy and for where I was in my career. And I would just encourage everybody to always be evaluating their next steps, making a timeline to work on, and make sure you keep it fresh.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to reach out to John at j-lockconsulting.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, John Lyons, jlockconsulting.com. And if you are a business owner, specifically a coach, consultant, or an agency, and you're really looking to scale your business and you want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to hop on a call with our team and discover how we went from 0 to $30 million in 26 months. Until then, keep on climbing.